Hi lovelies, you're welcome back to my channel. Thank you for stopping right here on my space today. And if this is the first time of coming across my channel, it's centered around sewing. I share and upload sewing tutorial videos right here and pattern drafting as well. So in today's tutorial, I'll be quickly sharing with you all a detailed process on how I cut and sew this bustier gown with detachable sleeves. So I'll be giving a detailed process from the cutting to the sewing and to the joining. And what interests me more about this particular dress is that I can wear it on 3 different occasions, and I also paired it with a kimono jacket which I already have the tutorial uploaded on my channel. So I'll be giving you a step-by-step guide on how to do all of this, and trust me, if you are to apply and take down every step I share right here, you will achieve exactly what I have.
A heart speed.
So without much ado, I just started off by drafting a basic bodice, which is the basic foundation of any dress or any type of dress you want to make. Giving a brief explanation of what I did here behind the camera. From the first line you see at the top of my paper is my shoulder line, and from that line I got my bust point of 10 inches and also my under bust of 13 inches, my half length of 15 inches, an extra half of an inch which is going to serve as my joining allowance to the skirt part of this my gown. And for the armhole area, I went ahead to mark 8 inches as my armhole length. I came in by half of an inch and created my armhole curve and labeled that line there my chest line. Okay, so right here for my shoulder, I had to subtract 1 inch because this is an off shoulder strapless bustier gown. So I subtracted 1 inch from my shoulder, and right there I have 6 inches instead of the normal 7 inches which is my normal shoulder measurement divided into 2, but here I subtracted just 1 inch from my shoulder. So right there on my shoulder, I went ahead to divide what I have there into 2 equal halves. I made a point right there, and I'm just going to create a line and connect it to my dart line, which is my nipple to nipple point divided into 2. That is how I got that dart. You see right there, I'm connecting to the point on my shoulder. So on that my dart, which is my nipple to nipple divided into 2, towards the center front, I'm going to just mark 1 inch from that my dart leg, and towards my side front I'm going to mark just 1.5 inch, and I made a point right there. So I'm going to connect this with a straight ruler to my underbust for the both sides. So the next I'm going to do is to come to my bust point, and from my bust point line I'm going to come down by half of an inch and make a point right there. So I'm going to create a curve using my curve drill. I'm connecting from that point I made right there up to my underbust like this using my curve drill. So we are really progressing, and the next thing I'm going to do is to mark my neck depth. I usually work with a neck depth of 6 inches, which I marked right there, and I use my stretch ruler to connect that into a straight line. So I'm going to label that part my center front first before I go ahead to recreate this waist dart on my neck depth. Okay, so towards my center front I'm going to mark 1 inch, and towards my side front or my armhole side I'll mark 1.5 inches. So I'll go on ahead now to also connect this way into my bust point line, but firstly I have to come up by half of an inch from that point, and I'm going to connect like this to avoid it being too pointy on the bust point. So I'll also repeat the same thing for the other side and also connect it up to that point I made from my bust point. So the next I'm going to do is to tighten this off shoulder to avoid gaping. So I'm going to do this by simply marking 1/4 of an inch away from the that I already created at both sides. So I'm going to also connect this exactly the same way I connected for my dart. Okay, so this is for tightening to avoid gaping and not for any other thing, and it is never going to be replaced because it is tightening. So the next I'm going to do is to simply replace this dart intake which I have right there on my neck depth. And remember what I said, I'm not going to replace the tightening which I gave to this. The only thing I'm going to replace is my dart. So I went ahead to measure what I had there, which was 2.5 inches, and I went ahead to also replace it right here and create also a new armhole. So I'm going to also create a slight curve at the center front. I don't want this a sweetheart, I don't want it straight, I just want a slight curve effect just in front, and that was exactly what I did right there. So the next thing I went to do is to divide my under bust circumference into 4, and I marked what I got right there. And also on my waist, I divided my waist into 4, and what I had right there was what I marked. And I'm simply going to connect all these points from my chest line to my under bust all the way through to my waistline or my half length. So from the top of that my neck depth, I'm going to make a slant to meet the part where my armhole stop, just like this. Reason is because this is going to be strapless. You don't have to give it a deep curve because it's not going to sit properly. So the next, I'll replace my waist dart and also connect from my bust point all the way to my waist. So while doing this, my phone stopped recording, so I'm going to give a brief explanation of what I did. So the only thing I did was also to recreate this dart just the way I created it on my waist. Okay, so after joining it from my bust point all the way to my half length, I went ahead to cut this out. So if you should look properly, you will understand what I mean right here. And also on the armhole area, I went ahead to also cut off the slant which I created earlier, so as you can see, and I also cut off my neck depth. Okay, so I really do apologize because my camera went off while filming this and I had no idea until I got to this point, but there was nothing much I did than this I just explained right here. So I just replaced my dart and I cut everything out the same way. But the next part I'm going to cut off now is my waist dart and also the dart I created on my neck depth. So and you can see that I already shaded it, meaning that I'm going to cut it off. So you carefully cut this out for the two sides, which I'm doing right here. So after that, this is what I have. You can see it's already having shape, and I just label the other side my side front so I don't get confused. So the next I'll simply do is to draft out a basic bodice for the back part of my dress. So of course I've done this countless times on this channel, so I had to do this behind the camera. But for that part where you see my zip allowance labeled, I left half of an inch. I also created my waist dart and I also created my armhole and every other necessary points needed in the drafting of these back bodies. So from my shoulder line as well, I'll go ahead and mark 6 inches, which is also my neck depth for the front part of this my dress. So I'm also going to divide my waist circumference by 4, and whatever I had right there, I marked it and joined from my chest half length. Okay, so I'll also go on ahead to replace my dart of 1 inch I gave right here and also connect it to my bust point. So I always replace my dart from exactly the point where the dart was taken. So from down my neck depth, I came down by 1 inch, and I'm simply going to connect this way because I want this a bit deeper than what I had for the front. Okay, so after this, I'll also go on ahead to slant the armhole area just like this, making sure that it connects to the other part where my chest line stopped. I don't know if you understand what I mean, but looking at this properly, you definitely understand everything I'm doing right here. So after all of this, I'll go on ahead now to cut out this exactly the same way I drafted. So after that, I'll give this my zip slope to avoid bulginess at the back of my dress by going up by 5 inches and slightly connecting this way and also cutting this off. So guys, I'm done drafting for the front and the back part of this my dress. So all I'll simply do is to cut this out on my Ankara fabric. So you can see right here, I already placed my side front piece of my dress on my fabric folded into 2, and I'm briefly giving you all an explanation because right here I'll be adding some allowance to this dress. So for the joining allowance, I added 1 inch, and for the front part at that point, you can see that I added half of an inch all through to the end, but I didn't add to the base because I already added this while I was drafting. But I didn't also add any allowance to the armhole area. Please take note of that as well. So I'll go on ahead now to cut this out, and when I'm done cutting this, I'm going to have 2 pieces of this. So I did the same thing for every other part I have right here, and you can see it all displayed out for you to have a proper view. So for the side front here, I have 2 pieces on fold, and also I added 1 inch for joining allowance and also for the stitching allowance. I also cut out my esther the same way I cut out for my fabric and also my lining piece as well. So for my esther, I have 4 pieces here, which is going to be ironed to my actual fabric and also to my lining piece. And for my center front, at the top part I added half of an inch, and to the sides I also added half of an inch, but to the center I didn't open it up because I cut out on fold and it is closed. So for also my back dress, I did the same thing. I added half of an inch at the top and also 1 inch at the side for joining allowance. I also cut out my stay and my lining piece as well. So I'll start by removing all these pins I have right here for me to be able to proceed with other important things I'm supposed to do on this dress. So for the underbust, I'm going to give it a little notch on that my underbust line, so please do give yours a little notch as well, and also on your bust point line. So after that, now I'm simply going ahead to also notch the dart for the back part, which I'll proceed also to cut out my breast part for my front dress. So I don't have a wadding piece and I'm making use of this breast pad which doesn't gum, but I'm actually going to show you how to gum this to your fabric. So I started off by folding this into two and getting the side front of my front dress, and I'm going to place this right on this my folded breast part I have right here. So I'll pin this down for it to start a place, and then from the under bust I'm going to pin this up. That was why I said you should notch your under bust. So I'm going to pin that way so it doesn't come down, and I'm going to make a point right there using my marker. So I'll make a point at the under bust and at the top part just like that. So on the bust point line, I'm actually going to divide my nipple to nipple point into two and add extra half of an inch. So I'll raise that up and I'm going to make a point on exactly on this breast part I have right here. So after this, now I'll trace out the front using my marker just this way, and after that I'll remove this my piece and complete the tracing. So having removed this, now I'm going to connect all of these dots I made right here together, and after connecting it, I'm just simply going to cut it out because this is exactly what So after cutting this out, I'm simply going to cut out half of an inch from this because I don't want this to start at the top part of my fabric. Okay, so remember, half of an inch was added at the top for sewing or joining allowance. So now for my center front piece, I'm also going to fold it on this my breast part on fold, and I'm going to pin this to this my breast part, and from the under bust I'm going to pin this upward because I'm also going to cut from the under bust all the way to the top part. So here we're not actually going to trace anything, we're just going to cut out the side the way it is without altering the center part of this our front dress. So I'll also cut this out, and after cutting this out I will separate this from my breast part and also subtract half of an inch from the top part of this my breast part. So basically that's all that you have to do right here. So like I said, I reduced half of an inch. Reason is because I don't want this to start at the top part of my fabric. So while sewing this, you actually understand every explanation I'm giving right here and why I said so. So now you can see what I have right here. And here, you know, this breast part doesn't iron or stick to your fabric, so I'm going to make use of my hemming gum to hem this to my fabric. But before that, I would have to iron my stay first to this my fabric, which I assume I've done right here now. So after ironing, I'm just simply going to place my hemming gum on top of this my stay. And please do not forget in a hurry that an stay that should be ironed to your fabric is the rough part. So this is exactly what I meant by I do not want my breast part to start from the top of my fabric, right? So I went ahead to place this my breast part by marking half of an inch first and place it and everything aligned. So you can see exactly the explanation I gave right there, and by the time you put your hemming gum and iron this, you realize that this sticks perfectly to your fabric. So this is just a simple way to go about this in case you don't have a wadding and you want to make use of the breast part you have right there with you. So for my lining piece, I also went ahead to iron my estate to this, and also the back piece of my dress. So I just brought it out here to show you guys what I have right here. So the next I'll be working with my front dress. So now I'm trying to show you all as well how thick it is to my fabric, despite that it's just an ordinary breast pad, but with your hemming gum you can perform the magic and get what you want. So I'm going to start by flipping this now to the right side. I'm going to flip this to the right side, and I'm going to start pinning this from the base of my dress. Okay, so from the base there, I'm going to make sure that it aligns properly at the base, and I'm going to pin this all the way through to the top part. And please, while doing this, do ensure that the notch parts you made on your underbust aligns as well, so you don't make any sort of mistakes. So you pin this right side facing each other at both sides, and after doing this is what you are going to have. It will look a bit weird until you are done sewing this on a sewing machine. So after this, I'll go ahead now and mark half of an inch all the way through from the base to the top part of this piece I'm holding right here for the two sides, and I'm going ahead to also stitch exactly on the marks I made on this my piece with my chalk. Please, if my explanation is not so clear enough, I believe that what I'm doing right here is clear enough. So from the base all the way to the top part of this piece I have right here, I'm going to mark half of an inch, which was a half of an inch, if you can remember, that was given to this while I was cutting on my fabric. So it's very important and necessary. So you can see me illustrating to you that you are supposed to stitch that, and I've gone ahead to do this right now, and it's not looking too weird as it was when I just pinned it down with my pin. So I flip this to the right side, and you can see how firm and standing this is already looking, despite I'm yet to iron this out. So the next is to bring your tailor's ham. You're going to place it right under your dress like this, and you're going to iron this seam open. So the reason is for this to give it a nicer and flatter shape, so it doesn't look so pointy while you are putting this on. So I'll quickly go ahead and do that, and after that I'll go on ahead to also join my lining piece the same way I joined the front part of my dress. So guys, this is the back part of my dress, and I'm simply going to place my lining and my fabric right sides facing each other, because I'm going to stitch the base, the zipper allowance area, the armhole, the top part, and for the sides I'm going to stitch using just 1/4 of an inch, and I'll leave about 2 inches space where I'll be turning over to the front part. So I'll do this for the two sides and keep that aside. And for my front piece lining, this is what I have. So go on ahead as well to also iron that open. And for this my front piece, I went ahead to iron this open, and you can see how nice this is already looking. So the next I'm going to do is to start joining my fabric to my lining. So to do that, I have to fold this into two and also notch the midpoint. I'll do the same thing for my lining piece and also for my fabric. So having done this, I'll make sure that the two notch parts aligns or comes together, and I'm going to pin it up and also pin all around this my piece. So I'll pin and stitch the top part using 1/2 of an inch, which was the allowance I gave to it. I'll stitch the sides using 1/4 of an inch. I'll stitch the base using 1/4 of an inch, and I'm going to leave like 1 inch or 1.5 inches at the sides where I'll be turning up, which I did right here for the back piece. And after turning this up, I went ahead to give this a very good press, and from there I'm just going to stitch that inwardly later on. So guys, the next thing now is for me now to also join from my front dress and my back dress. But before that, while I stitch this my front dress, I went ahead to stop stitch on my lining piece. So I'm going to bring this my back dress, and I'm going to place it exactly right sides facing each other on my front dress, and I'm going to pin the sides. So after pinning the sides, I'll mark my stitching or sewing allowance of 1 inch, which I gave to this, and go ahead and stitch this down at both sides. So now for the sleeve, this is what I have right here, and for the length of this piece I cut out, I have 46 inches. and for the wideness I have about 9¼ inches or thereabout. So if you want your sleeve fuller, you can go ahead and increase more inches or add more inches to your fabric. So from the top part, I folded in about 3/4 inch, and from that 3/4 inch I went ahead to fold in about 1/4 inch because I'm trying to create a channel where my elastic will be passing through. So right here I did it for the both parts of this my piece I have right here, and here is the elastic I'll be fixing to this channel I created. So this elastic I have here is about almost 1/2 inch wide, but not 1/2 inch. So I went ahead to use my safety pin to pass this through this channel I created. So I'm going to pass this through for the both parts of this channel I created, and I'm going to drag this and keep drawing this to make sure that it's not tight but fitted, and also not big as well. So by the time you are stretching this, you actually get to realize when it's perfect for you to stop. Okay, so I went ahead to secure the two, and this is what I have. So mine is not looking very puffy because of the size of fabric I used, and I already joined one part of the sleeve, but I'll show you how I joined this. So you're going to bring this together this way, and you're going to join at the wrong side. So from that point you're going to join from the top to the end using just 1/2 inch. So having done that, I kept that aside, and I've joined the front and the back piece of my dress, and here's the skirt part where I'll be attaching the upper part of my dress to. So to attach this, I had to fold this into two to get the middle, and I went ahead to notch. I also went ahead to repeat the same thing for the upper part of my gown and also notch. So the next, I'll make sure that these two notch parts aligns and comes together, and by the time I did this, I pinned this all the way through to the both ends of my waist, and it's perfectly aligned, guys. So I carefully did this, and please, as you are sewing, don't forget to iron as well. So while pinning, please open up your seam because you don't stitch while your seam is closed. Okay, so pin this to the very end at both sides and stitch. I stitched using 1/2 inch. So that is all, and I also went ahead to fix this my black zipper you see right here. So here is my final outcome. Thank you all so much for watching. I believe if you try this out, you definitely love the outcome. Thank you so much for watching, and if you're yet to subscribe to my channel, please kindly do so. If you also find this video helpful, I urge you to please hit on the subscribe button. It actually means a lot to me. So till some other time, see you all on the same channel. Bye lovelies.